Okay, everyone good? Call this workshop to order, June 4th, 2024. We are continuing discussions relative to the fiscal year 2025 budgeting process. And with us again is Rebecca Romero out of the accounting office. Commissioners, she just emailed an updated binder to you all. As you all know, kind of what was discussed earlier, it's a bit of a moving target. It seems like each day with different revenues and expenditures coming in and out. So I guess at this time, I'd hand it over to you, Rebecca, if you want to update anyone on where we're at year to date.
Okay, so as far as the budget carryover from last year, I updated that this morning with the last payroll. There are a few miscellaneous payroll items that we're gonna be paying out, probably around mid-June. So I kept those on there. Everyone else should be good for the remainder of the year. Operating, I left at 1 month or 4 weeks, and then capital, I'm going strictly off of the projects. And there really wasn't much progress on the capital projects from last time we met, but the payroll and the operating are pretty much up to date as of this morning. So that will leave us with the 10 million just for Core County, the 10.2 million to carry over, along with the 7.3 and 1/2, with the funds that we're still owed for this year. So then if we go to the other worksheet where we have everybody's carryover, that's our departments, our capital funds, the hospital maintenance, their lab money, etc. We can go down to there, and that's at 14.1. If we add in, this was the part I was trying to correct and it wouldn't let me. So we have the 7.3 in revenue still due to us. We're not positive where our ARPA money is being held, so we subtract that out. And that gives us a 17.7 carryover, leaving us with a 2.33 deficit or shortfall.
Can you put the page numbers on next time?
Yeah,
Because I don't know what page you're talking from right now.
I really wasn't on a page. I was just kind of going through it because we've been working on it all morning, so.
You almost have this memorized, is that what you're saying?
So it would be the bottom of the summary.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that projected carryover of the 14.1 mil. And then I just did the math that we figured right before here, but it wouldn't let me update that part for some reason.
That's towards almost the second to the last page.
And I did track down
Yeah.
that ARPA money that you guys were asking about this morning. And it was put into grants revenue, and it's being held in Commerce Bank.
And it.
So then will it,
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Rob, yeah.
and that is a part
of the
of our
pooled,
current
okay,
pooled cash. I had that conference with Mark Cowan earlier today.
okay, yeah, I was trying to track to like which ones that made up of, and I couldn't find the control accounts. So yeah, so then that 3.6 is taken out, so we can hold that for grants.
It's already taken out or it needs to be taken out?
It's taken out with the 2.33 figure that I gave you.
Okay.
So on that, you said a 7.3 million in anticipated revenue. Okay, so then you add that with the 14, that gets you to the 21, but then we back out the 3.69 in ARPA pill.
Yes.
Okay.
And that leaves us with 17,762,016.
Then you're showing a 2.333438.
Yeah.
99. Mary, if you look on that second to last page,
Backside of it.
got the blue on the bottom.
Mr. Chairman, if I could get clarification on something before we get too deep into this. Rebecca, on that last page, the one that has got the blue lines where you have got the carryover at the bottom where you are showing our revenues. It shows year-to-date collections of $53,997,755.43. Then at the bottom, it shows other revenue estimate from commissioner. I would assume that was from our conversation.
Yes,
Okay.
because I wasn't too sure. I didn't get the details from you on
And I
where
don't-
all of those figures came from.
I don't know where that number comes from, but I can make it much simpler.
Okay.
Okay, with respect to all of this. So, Mr. Chairman, this morning, I went to the treasurer's office to get our actual pooled cash balance. So I took that number and used that as our basis for what our cash is. And then I did an estimate based on what our actual year-to-date, our revenues were for fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24, and looked at what the revenue for each of those during the month of June was. In one of those years, the revenue was $6.6 million. In one of those, it was $6.1 million. So I used a figure of $6.2 million as what my projected revenue would be. That would include all revenue which is coming in. So if you look at that last line that Rebecca has got, she has the attorney's reimbursement separate, and she has the PILT revenue separate, and then other revenue from commissioner, which I don't know where that number came from. And I know it was from conversations that Rebecca and I had, but I have never had that number.
Oh, that was just the estimate that you wrote on something on my desk, and it said 7.35 total estimate. And so I took the PILT and the attorney's
so
reimbursement minus
on-
that.
on
That's
your-
how I came up with
On
that
your
one.
previous iteration of this report, you had shown our year-to-date budget is $53 million and our year-to-date collection of $49 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed still due to the county, $3.842 million. Okay. And then below that, you had other revenue still due to county. You had the attorney's reimbursement and the PILT revenue of $3.824 million. And in the conversation we had, my conversation was that I believed that the attorney's reimbursement, the $350,000, was already included in the number that you showed as still due to the county of $3.842 million. So your I believe it's $8,016,820.56, I felt should be decreased by $350,000. So that's where the $7 million
Okay.
amount
gotcha.
came. But if you look at the new iteration, which you've done, you have revenue still due to the county of the 3.8 million of PILT, which I verified yesterday morning with PILT. We are going to receive that. It will be here at the end of the month. They're still working on details, but that will be here. The other revenue I would anticipate would be the balance between $3.8 million and $6.2 million. So basically $2.4 million rather than the $3.175 that is shown from the other commissioner.
Okay,
So I think if we make that adjustment, if we decrease, actually, if we just took and got rid of all four of those items, or excuse me, the three items on the bottom of the page, and substituted for that $6,200,000, I think it would simplify. And that's what I get using the actuals from our financial system that we came up with yesterday. And then if you apply those numbers, I think you come up with the correct number for what our carryover should be. No, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, there's still, we're missing the component of what our expenditures for the period from May 31st through June 30th in this calculation also.
the expenditures to get us to the year end.
Yeah, did you factor them into your numbers on the top of the sheet then for June?
That's on
'Cause-
the carryover sheet for the departments. It's the 664,000 figure.
I'm sorry, where is that, Rebecca?
It should be on the same page where you're looking at the revenue carryover. It's the projected to get us to the end of the physical year,
Okay,
that 664,000.
so that's, Mr. Chairman, that's the difference between the numbers that we were talking about earlier. Is the numbers we were using for expenditures were 2.7 million versus that 664,000.
Yeah, and the accounting office ran another payroll yesterday. So that's as of this morning.
Okay, and that was the one number that I said that I was not comfortable with, was the expenditures for the rest of that period.
Yeah, so the only thing we have in here for payroll now is miscellaneous items that we'll take care of probably mid-June.
Okay,
And then everything else, the expenditures are 1 month of operating still. I have a few departments that are going to be doing budget amendments to take care of that, but I included that in this projected to get us to the end of the new year.
Okay.
I mean, to the fiscal year.
I think that the only change then, Mr. Chairman, that I would make would be those changes at the bottom on the revenue still due. And rather than having $7,350,000, I believe a more accurate number is going to be 6.2 million.
Okay, so I think I followed you there, and so that would, you have this calculated, Rob? You're
I
looking at a
don't.
23.
I'm still working on it. 17,067. Man, my eyes would work 16,465.
What was the ARPA pill? 3.69?
Yes, 3.691202. So then that should bring us down to roughly 16,612,000.
That's what I'm showing. I'm getting about 3.5 on the shortfall. Is that what you're showing?
Rebecca, under grants, you just said 3.69 ARPA under the pool, but you only have 2.067 under grant.
Yeah, that's the grants altogether for the budget that Christina wrote. The 3.6 ARPA money has not been written into the budget. Christina said she'll do that when you guys decide where you want to spend it. So that's not,
So we need to.
Oh, 3.3 is it?
yeah, so I have 3,483,000, right?
This is why we call it a workshop.
Because everyone's working, doing their math.
I think the difficulty this year is we know that obviously the valuation is down, and so revenues are going to be down compared to last year, but also we have an increase in capital funding on top of the unknowns that the airport's going to bring forth. So we've tried to plan for that accordingly, but we've got just shy of 14 million in capital requests this year. So when you factor all that in, we're trying to come up with exactly what the shortfall is, assuming that we fully funded the capital request. Already taken into account the cuts that were made at the last workshop relative to the outside agencies. So we're just getting a little clarification on that. Find a crystal ball, Rob.
I did not. I was running the numbers in my system again to see what I come up with the new expenditure numbers. And now I've flipped our numbers to where rather than being at a point where I believe that our deficit is higher than what was reported, now I show that it's lower. So I would suggest that we go with Rebecca's numbers. And then we can make adjustments to that after the fact.
Did you back out the ARPA in your calculation?
I did.
Okay. So let me try and walk through how I got to it, because apparently Rebecca has the same number, so maybe that's some sort of a win, but on the bottom of the anticipated revenues page, which is the blue, the second to last page.
Yes, sir.
So we've substituted, rather than the 7.35 million, we've changed that to 6.2 million. So when you add that to the year-to-date collections, a couple lines up from that, which is the $53,997,755.43. That total should be $60,197,755.43.
That's what I show.
Then you back out the anticipated expenditures through the end of the month, which is the $664,690.46. Remaining balance is $59,533,064.97. Then you take out from that the ARPA PILT, which is $3,691,202. That leaves you with 16,612,016.26.
You lost me there, Mr. Chairman.
I just pulled the pilt out.
Right. So you pulled the PILT from the 59,533,065. You subtracted 3,961,000 or 3,691,202. And I'm getting 55,841,863 on that number.
Oh, I skipped a step. Hang on here.
I took the 14 million and added in our 6.2, then backed out the 3.6 ARPA, which gives us a 16, changes that figure to the 16 million minus our 20 million shortfall, leaves us with the 2.3. I think we both did it differently, but we
Yeah,
come
and
up with the same figure.
I've got my columns in line with the chairman, so I'm trying to figure out where the step is that I've missed.
Oh, okay.
Because we had gone from the 60,197,755, which was our current balance plus the estimated revenue. Then we subtracted the estimated expenses of 664,690, which was 59,533,065. Then I thought the next step that you said, Mr. Chairman, was to subtract the ARPA PILT of 3,691,202. That still leaves us 55,841,863, and somehow we jumped down to 16 million. So have you taken out the general reserves? Is that, or what step have I missed?
I'd like to be able to answer that, but now I've confused myself, Rob,
I don't see why we're taking out the ARPA pill if we never added it in.
because it's already in the revenues, the year-to-date revenues.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
in our
in the
pooled
folder,
cash.
But it's not in the pools.
It's in
Okay.
the pooled cash and they just don't want to count it. Yeah.
while we're doing that, Rebecca, if you could tell me how you arrived at that number? You started with the 53 million year-to-date collections.
Okay, so we're going back to the revenues then.
Well, I'm trying to use the formula you got to get
Okay.
to where you are right now. The chairman started with our year-to-date balance of 53,997,000. What did you start with for your first calculation with respect to that?
I just moved our 6.2 million that we're going to estimate that we're still due to and added it to my projected carryover of the 14 million.
14 million is,
And that's on the fiscal year summary.
gotcha. So you just added 6.4 million there.
6.2,
excuse me, yeah.
yes. Which, now I gotta find my scratch paper where I did the math.
20.3.
Yeah, so 20.3. And then minus the 3.691. Which leaves us with the 16,612. And subtract that from the shortfall of 20,095,000.
You got ahead of me again here. So you added your projected carryover and then the projected revenue.
Yes,
And then where did you go from there?
subtract the ARPA money of the 3 point.
0.6 million.
Mhm.
And that's 3691202, right?
Yes.
.3 short then, right, Rebecca? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, what was that?
3 shortfall.
2.33. Yeah, 2,333,000.
That's with your 7.3. But if we changed it to what Rob was saying, it would be
Oh, yes,
3.6.
you're right.
Yeah, 6.2.
Yeah, you're correct. 3.483.
Clear as mud.
Yeah,
Figure out how we got.
I have lost it completely here now, so.
Oh, I had it. Let me see.
It's too many numbers today.
I say the worksheet is also in the N drive. If it's easier to bring up my Excel Word worksheet and then just make the changes on there. So it's going to be the fiscal year summary.
God, can't do anything on a phone calculator. It just doesn't work.
You can do it by hand. That's what I did.
Tried that earlier. That didn't work well at all. Okay. Help me with where I'm at this point in time, Rebecca.
Okay,
I have taken your current projected carryover plus our projected revenue number of 6.2 million. Okay. And come up with a number that I don't have my calculator anymore.
20.3.
20,303,218, basically.
yes,
And our current requests are 20,095,454.94. So we would currently show that would be a surplus.
the 20 million is a shortfall, and then the projected carryover is a positive.
Right.
So then we would take the shortfall plus our positive carryover, and that gives us the 3.483.
Mr. Chairman, I will trust those numbers for right now. I have looked at way too many numbers in the last 2 days.
Well, Rebecca, what number are we taking as our, we're adding it to the minus 5,999,000. Is it the 6.2 million?
We're adding 6.2 million to the 14,103.
Oh. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Then we have to back out the ARPA
Yes,
and the amount that you
So then that-
anticipate through the end of the year.
no,
Correct.
that include, or the expenditures to the end of the year?
Mm-hmm.
Nope, that's already included.
That's updated in your balance.
That's the 646 that you've got.
Yes.
listed there.
Mhm. Because I'm only taking the 10.2 million from here and transferring it over to the summary sheet. So that's included already. So that way we don't have to back it out.
I got it once, but I can't get it twice, but you did, so that makes me feel a little better. Either way, we do have a shortfall, I guess. It's just a matter of,
And your number is what? Once again, 2.3 million, 3.3 million.
3.48.
Yeah, 3,483,438.
Way that should- I mean,
But it's not on here. Where is it at? Oh, there it is. My numbers are on my. Hmm? Oh.
all right, Rebecca, you gotta help me get to her again. I've tried it like 6 times here and I can't find it. So you added the 6.2 in anticipated revenue for June. To the total projected carryover of 14,103. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so from there, where did you go?
From there, we get 20,303,218.
Okay,
Now we need to back out the ARPA of 3.691, which leaves us with 16,612.
got it.
So that's a positive carryover, but we have a shortfall without that carryover of 20 million. So you have your 20 million shortfall plus your positive amount of the 16 million, which leaves us with the shortfall of 3.48.
Okay. I'm back.
Yeah, I got to the point where you took the ARPA out and got the 16,612,016.
Okay.
Okay,
Then
so
you
then
took
you have your shortfall of 20 million.
million.
So that's going to be a negative number plus your 1612.
Right. So that's negative 3,483,439.
Yes.
I started off super confident and I went to another planet there for a little bit.
Well, I'm super confident in looking at the actual numbers and what we did a totally different direction, but it's $1 million different. And for our purposes at this point in time, I think that's irrelevant. I think we can work through that. So
We're not counting that ARPA. That's confusing.
So we're leaving that as far as
Yep, we're
grants.
putting it out, and we're saying it's not in there, then we're saying it is in there, and we're putting it back in, and
no, what we're saying is it was receipted into the general fund and is being held there. So we currently have that money there. So it's still there. And we're not expending it in this budget with respect to that. Phone keeps ringing too.
why else in this budget, because we're waiting to meet with Christina.
Because Christina intended to bring us that as a carryover with the grants because the PILT ARPA is considered a grant. But unfortunately, she was unable to make it because of jury duty today. So it has not been presented.
Yeah, and she said she'd work on that budget whenever you guys decide where you want to spend it.
But it could be spent on some of our capital things, right? That ARPA money could go towards some of our capital priorities,
It could go to anything we choose to use it for.
so it is gonna help our budget, okay.
Well, it's. Yes, it's a
Okay, got it.
one-time fund, basically. So,
So it's gonna help our shortfall. The ARPA will help our shortfall, 3.6 million versus 3.48. We should have a balanced budget. We're very close.
I think,
If we chose to use that money to fund the deficit, that would be true.
No, it's not funding a deficit. It is funding capital projects.
Well, it's funding.
We
the
don't
budget
have a
in its
deficit then.
Entirety.
what we're getting at is we're not utilizing that money to balance the budget. So we would utilize that one-time funding towards a specific
Oh, I see what
project,
you're
like
saying.
perhaps the airport or,
Or night building or something. Okay,
yes.
got it.
yes. So with that, I think
We're making it difficult for ourselves is what I think.
we do. The shortfall with the updated numbers is $3,483,438.73.
Yes.
Okay, should we start the workshop now?
Yes.
Oh, boy, that was tough. Okay. Everyone good with that number? So on that note, I mean, obviously, about 14 million of that is capital, and that includes both core county and component units, obviously. I think it's clear that we're gonna have to make some additional cuts. where that comes in is the question, and I guess the discussion for today in order to prepare for our next meeting. In anticipation of this, I can tell you I ran some numbers. I got pretty close to this number, but that's also assuming that we're going to utilize the entirety of the carryover to go towards the capital. So that we would not be carrying over any money into reserves for the year.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, if we have 40 million in reserves and that is there for a rainy day, I think if we have to use a little bit of it rather than take deep cuts, I think that would be all right. I know we want to have a perfectly balanced budget, but when you come in 20 million short, it's hard to do that.
Well, I guess my concern and my heartburn with that is it's easier to utilize, carry over towards capital projects because they are essentially one-time funding. So I think we've established that we can balance based off operations, which is most important, but then where do you take it from there? I know everyone's got a little bit different philosophy on that. Last year, we identified that because it was a good year, we wanted to put money aside for capital improvements in a reserve account, as well as any strategic development to prepare for future needs and projects that we may want to inquire, which included, the night oil tool building, if that happens to be one of them. As with everything, that can be criticized because some of the feedback we got was that those reserve amounts are the taxpayers' money and they should be given back to services within the community. But the conflicting argument with that is now we're faced with an airport who has a $22 million shortfall. So I wouldn't call it a rainy day fund because that's a very loose term at the other side of the state, but it certainly is there to help with needs that may come about. That's not the need that I think we anticipated spending that on, but if we use additional reserve money to balance the budget, that just lessens the opportunity for projects such as that or anything else that comes along. So I think as you see, even with this budget, the carryover in capital and the amount of projects that weren't able to be completed, it's probably unlikely that all of those would get completed this year anyway. So I am more apt, in my opinion, to, kind of start with those that we feel like we can push off for another year in order to keep us in a financial position where we're living within our means and also planning for an unknown expense at the airport. And I can give you those suggestions, or if you guys have a different philosophy, I'm open to that as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
I think just to kick things off and to make all of our press happy, I would suggest we remove the $800,000 for the demolition of the Carnegie building. I think we can push that off another year.
Yeah, that was on my list as well.
I agree.
So I think if we do have a little bit of money, I'd like to have something somewhere where we can get an updated study done on what it would actually cost us to salvage or demolish.
One of the let's see here. Component unit cuts that I had suggested last time when it was in regards to capital was Southwest Counseling, and I know there's been some back and forth about that. I went back and looked at their budget as far as what they had this year And they had budgeted in their own budget 830,000 and they spent 100,000 of that. And in their request to us, no, excuse me. Yeah, and then in fiscal year 25, their capital budget is reduced down to 100,000. So I think, it seems apparent in some of these discussions and the headache we've been going back and forth about, we need to improve whatever that process is through capital and coming up with a way to, I guess, pick and choose from that each and every year. It's hard because, we put $8 to $10 million towards capital and then, 3 or 4 of it gets spent. So we roll it back in and go through the process the next year. And we're asking all these component units to come before us and keep us in the loop as to the improvements they're making to a county-owned facility. And so then it feels like they're dumping their capital, some of them, their capital requests on us. And so it's this back and forth that I think we need some clarity on, but there's a lot of them that are revenue generating as well. And that's not the case for a couple. So I guess that was a long story too. I would recommend cutting the 381,386 out of Southwest Counseling's capital.
So is that all 5
Yes,
requests total?
How much was that again?
381, 386.
So I've been working with Irene a little bit at the hospital and, if we reduced their maintenance fund by 300,000, that's about 18%. So that would take them down a pretty big chunk.
So one, I guess, issue I have with the hospital's request this year is they reduced the Title 25, but they then turned that money around and made it a part of their maintenance request, which kept their budget flat compared to last year, but it reduced Title 25 almost in half. I'm trying to pull that up here. And so if you were to take that out, that would be a $242,000 saving in itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of what they were trying to do was balance everything we've been working on between the keeping their request flat like we asked, but then also trying to set some maintenance money aside. So they were taking on more of the smaller maintenance projects themselves in order to build up larger maintenance money. So they have a little more skin in the game.
And then I guess there's the question on that too. They have indicated a $949,000 carryover in regards to their maintenance fund. And then we have the discussion about the depreciation fund and which will likely be taken action on next meeting. But between the two of those, that's 1.1 million.
Yeah, like I said, I think they were just trying to follow along with the direction we were going and talking about and ask them to go. And so it's kind of looks a little goofy because the 949 is actually 2024 money that we had worked with them on to get that depreciation fund set up. So I don't know if we really want to ding them for doing what we asked.
No, and I'm not suggesting any dings. I just, in an attempt to balance, I mean, is your thought to fully fund the depreciation fund with that 949,000, assuming it's established?
But yeah, for the first year, and then take the 300,000 out of 25 funds. Kind of, I mean, because Rebecca and I talked about this, so it's looks a little odd on paper because this depreciation fund wasn't in the budget in 24. So even though the money was budgeted, it wasn't budgeted as a depreciation fund. Well, it isn't yet official. So that actually spills over into 25. So it skews the numbers a little bit to make it look like we're double loading them in 1 year. But we really aren't. It's still 2024. 950 is still 2024 funds, really.
And that 950 is included in that carryover. So we're,
Carryover.
yeah, so they didn't use all of the maintenance funds. So normally we would get that back, but now they're requesting for it to carry over. So we put it in as a carryover, but then we just turn around and give it back to them. So, I mean, it all works out in the end, but yeah, it does kind of look odd. At least, yeah. And it's just basically moving money from the maintenance fund into a capital fund or depreciation fund, however you want to call it.
Mr. Chairman, given the current deficit that we're looking at of now, if we take out the Southwest Counseling, we're looking at roughly $2.3 million. I would suggest we potentially look at not fully funding that depreciation account at $949,000, but starting that depreciation account for them with the intent to allow them in the future to maintain that maintenance fund money and create a larger base so that they can do other projects. But that would be an area that we could certainly cut some of our deficit down by not funding that in full. Much as I hate to do that, but
Yeah,
there aren't a lot of places where we've got a lot of money we can look at.
What number are you thinking then?
$500,000 is sticking in my mind that we seed that with $500,000, which would leave us 449,000 roughly that we could apply as carryover to our deficit.
but Commissioner Jones, help me out with this, because they would be doubling up on the Title 25 amount this year, if I'm understanding that right. So it was 488,000, I believe, is what we budgeted fiscal year 24, fiscal year 25. Title 25 is budgeted at 242,000, so they took that remaining, or 220,000. So they took the remaining 242 and added that to their maintenance. So their overall request is still the 1.9 million, but they just shifted the excess in Title 25 onto their hospital maintenance fund.
Right, so if we take the 300 out of there, then that wipes that out plus some.
Okay, I just didn't know if you meant that
Yeah.
plus what Rob's talking about, or,
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time with that because we kind of said what we were doing. I know it's not down on paper, but the heartburn I have with that, and I understand we only have so many places to cut, but the heartburn I have with that is in essence, we're trading healthcare for an airport. That kind of bothers me.
yeah, countywide,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's a hard one to choke down. I get your point. I understand the 500,000 is seed money but that's 800,000 or 450,000. 750,000 roughly we're taking out of healthcare. So that's pretty substantial. I know we aren't forced to give that money in the first place. It's out of the trying to do what's right, but
No,
hard
and
part is how do you prioritize things? I think you got to prioritize healthcare pretty high on the list, but every group that we fund thinks they're the top of the priority list. So that's the struggle.
Well, the airport, I know we have to plan for it, but he said it was least probably a year away, so it may not even hit this year's budget.
Yeah, but it already hit this year's budget by $1 million, so that's.
For the regular budget, yeah, right. But the other backup funds, I know he's still working on grants and it's sitting at 3 million possibly. But that's a year away and maybe on next year's budget.
That doesn't make me feel better.
We'll take it out of your special reserve emergency capital fund you already designated. For the shooting complex, yeah, now which is more important?
That was for the future growth of this county. But we traded off because of some poor decisions.
Island, if, considering the 540,000 increase for the library boiler. I mean, it's not a huge savings, but could we push the library's outreach vehicle for another year?
I think we can.
I mean, it's only 55, but
But I think they can squeeze another year out of what they have.
okay.
And we can be on the lookout for another vehicle to pop up somewhere in the county to help them out with if it becomes necessary. I did want to, if we get onto the library topic, I did want to ask Gene, because I haven't had an explanation of that increase from anybody.
Yeah, it's like an actual written estimate and that's what it came in at.
Well, then I guess I need your guidance. Is that something we need to budget this year?
Those cuts alone would be $1,014,000.
Well, you want to go from the bottom up and
Yeah, I mean, I think even with that, we're still gonna be short. It looks like that would be a matter of events complex and museum.
Let's say it again.
Well, out of the top two on the component units being the boiler and the electrical upgrades for the events complex, with already suggesting the cut to Southwest Counseling, that only leaves the couple events complex projects and one at the museum. So I don't know if you've got any background there as far as some of those other projects. I know there's some road improvements for events complex and some small hall improvements.
Right off the top, Candy said she could drop off the vehicles at the bottom if necessary. I mean, her list is prioritized just like our list. I know the small hall improvements were at the top of their wish list, I think.
But it seemed like
Some of
they,
that can be accomplished with revenue based. I mean, of all of our components, their people can step up and do a lot of the work if we don't have the money, even though they're spread pretty thin. And I think they'll understand.
and they did do quite a bit in that small hall. It's in pretty good shape compared to what it used to be.
The doors on it, we got the new roof on it.
Oh, oh, are we gonna need them for breakout rooms for the convention for 2 years? WCCA?
It's hard to say. We can always use more. Anything we spent here today wouldn't be ready for this year's high school finals rodeo. So. Gene, will you just give us a little background on the boiler at the library and why it's in the state that it's in?
Similar to the boilers for
Mr. Chairman, one other area that I think we could defer would be under our construction projects, the facilities maintenance account amount of $150,000, which was set aside to do a feasibility study for adding the office space here. Certainly something I would like to see, but I think that is another of those items that we could defer to next year. It's not a lot, but $150,000 helps.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And then, Gene, while you're walking towards the front,
Yeah, I mean, I
Now you show up with recommendations?
well,
So, so Gene has got, boy, and he's put it in red, so it's really difficult to see. You want me to start on the first page that you gave me, or want me to start all at the bottom of capital completely? So he has taken out the $150,000 for facilities maintenance for the investigation of the feasibility study and the $800,000 for Carnegie. He has taken out $37,500 for fencing at Crosswoods Park, $13,500 for the new carpet cleaner extractor. He has taken out $15,335 for the skid steer mounted kick broom and $288,000 for the purchase of 4 3/4 ton pickups.
Piece of cake, we're done.
He has suggested $35,000 for the PTO deck mower for roadside mowing and $60,000 from Facilities Parks and Rec for Mesa Park rehab and upgrades.
Well, I would recommend he resubmit those for the ARPA money one time. So it totally doesn't have to go away.
What was the one right before the Mesa Park rehab?
Mesa Park rehab.
PTO.
Road and Bridge, $35,000. Is that
P-
the? Is that the
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you.
or-
Did you get each of those?
Yes, thank you.
Taylor?
What was that total up to?
I have not totaled it.
I don't keep up
Um,
on my notes, they'll, oh, I won't know what to do tomorrow.
You need to look at, I
I'll
did
read
one
those
more
off.
here if you want to check
Yeah.
later.
I've got it over here. 35,000. 60,000. Well, it's red on this. It's really tough to read. I got to go to my other sheet. Be able to see what the numbers are.
I've got the totals.
Well, I'm proud of my fellow commissioners. They're working really hard to balance the budget based on what we have as income. I commend them on that, but I don't think we should suffer when there are other pots of money that we can use, like the ARPA maybe to help for the one-time things.
Okay, so you got the county office here, Carnegie Building, and then all the ones that Rob just read is 1,399,335. But then also on that list, because I did talk with Gene, so I have that sitting here as well. It's just getting a vibe from you all, but that's been tough today. Would be cutting the component capital projects, which adds another 1,014,986. So if you were to add those cuts plus with what was discussed on the hospital, we're looking at a $320,117 deficit.
And did you guys cut the library vehicle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically that would cut everything on the component capital other than the boiler at the library and the electrical upgrades at the events complex.
Cover those over with pink next time, will you, Gene, so I can read them? It's hard to see with the red. There you go. Red lettering on the red. Yeah.
So that looks like it would bring our capital down to 12 million. Is that right? If I got everything.
I'm searching here.
Does Gene have a total on there of like all of his together?
He doesn't. That's what I'm working towards also. Okay. So all of the capital in, Mr. Chairman, was what total?
Well, just for, because I have everything up to Gene's recommendations. As far as like my math goes. So I just didn't know if there was a total on his.
I don't have a total
Okay.
for what his cuts are. That's what I'm trying to come up with here now,
I'm almost there.
but I can't read a lot of it, so.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Dean a question?
Of course.
On the ARPA, that stuff for, Christina will give us, does the capital committee, are you the ones that help her decide what can be on that list? Oh, she always puts it under labor or something like, okay, I remember that now. Okay, sorry. Oh, thanks for that reminder. I always forget that. Christina has to always tell me that again.
Yeah, there's usually a lot of rules.
So the audit, it'd be a lot easier if you take it out of. Well, we'd take 3 million out of the sheriff's budget and do those other projects on capital and then give you the ARPA money. Really?
I'm off about 20 grand between Gene's number and mine, but it's around 11.5 in capital. So I missed one somewhere, I think.
11,
11.5. I got 11.579, 875. I think some of that just might be the updated.
Vending machine has a tape.
is that 11,000? No, that can't be right.
11 million.
11,
I'm
oh,
sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
But let me think. So I have it at before Gene's recommendations. I have the new shortfall at 1.2 million. And our original deficit was only. Yeah, I don't,
three
I don't
point
think
four eight
James is
three.
11 million.
It was
That's not a cut,
3.43.
that's what's left over after the cut.
Oh, okay. I thought he was trying to cut 11. I was like, we don't need that much.
No, so the cut would have been,
Okay, gotcha.
close to two. He's got it as 2,398,986. And I'm just gonna show you what I got here.
I gotta write 1.399 million in cuts that Gene recommended, including the ones we'd already covered.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
1.399335. Is that what Gene recommended?
Yeah, plus
Plus the,
the component capital.
Yeah, so I got total component after all cuts of 1,231,036.
I still have the component units at 1.7. Because I've been subtracting them as we go. So
We
I must have
cut
missed something
everything but the
somewhere.
top two on component, didn't we? So 1.165 plus 66,036.
Yeah, but as far as a cut, so that's what's remaining in there, right? So we're cutting 1,014,986 plus 1,399,335. I believe the total cuts would be 2,414,321 if I did that right.
So with all of that, that's what's, I updated it on here.
What did you say, Rebecca? I was double checking math. I think I got it. So I'm showing we cut 2,414,321.
Yes.
Okay. So out of that, that should leave, when you factor in the hospital discussion that we had, which was 749,000. A deficit of 320,117.73.
What was that again, please?
The deficit,
Yeah, what was it?
320,000 $117.73.
So that's with cutting the hospital 300,000 to their maintenance, correct? And then take the depreciation down to 500,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. You guys getting the same?
Yep.
So what's everyone's flavor on that?
Well, the budget's not done until we figure out where we're gonna spend the ARPA stuff. And that may free up some, which would more than cover that.
And I don't know what the rules are on the like restrictions and where it can be spent and all of that.
Oh,
So
sh-
that's why we were waiting for Christina on that one.
She
'cause
knows,
handles
and
that.
she's
Yeah.
given me the lesson 100 times, but I forget. It's supposed to be a easy category that we don't have to track every 10 different things.
So do you have us at 519 now?
On the deficit,
Mm-hmm.
show 320.
320. Okay, so I must have missed something somewhere.
So I've got,
So I have the 2.4 for capital. That's everybody. 300,000 from the maintenance fund. And then if we take the hospital down to 500,000, that saves us 449,693. So I must have missed
I
something.
didn't factor the 693.
Events complex.
Mr. Chairman, I hate to bring this up because we have not discussed it. But we also have impact assistance funding from prior projects, which has not been expended and does not have any regulation on what our use of that money is. This comes from a discussion that I had with Christina at the end of the last week. And there's approximately $570,000 in impact assistance funding that we could use. But we have not had any discussions as to what we wanted to do with that type of funding. So that is another area where we have some revenue available.
Plus, we may have some new impact assistance, plus we have the ARPA.
Yes, the key with this is there are no restrictions on this $570,000. It's from previous projects, and it is not tied to the schedules, as are the new industrial siting regulations.
But Rob, is it not included anywhere in our budget income?
It is not. It is held in the impact assistance fund.
What was that from, Rob? Which project do you remember?
I want to say it was Genesis. There were two projects. One of them was Genesis, and that was the bulk of it, I think. And then there was another prior project. It may have been TG, I think.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I think with some of these funds, I treat them as enterprise funds because they're not part of the general operations and certainly the capital of budgets that we're putting together. And I think we do need to make a plan for the expenditures of those, but I hate to pool different funds in to help balance operations and capital. And so I think that's why we've always kept them separate in the other funds category. Same with the ARPA PILT, but I agree that they shouldn't just sit there forever.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I just felt like it was something that everyone needed to be aware of.
Yeah.
So is that? Because when I looked up the project codes for our current impact tax fund, all of those she already has going to different projects.
As I say, what she told me last week was this was prior to those restrictions and that money would be available.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Put it on your list just to double check yourself.
So there's the disbursements that came in, I think, on Trans West, which are encumbered because those are going specifically to Wamsutter and
Correct.
indigent care there. And I think there's 3 specific outlays. This is separate from that. This is coming from, I don't know, was it? Yeah, these are the older projects.
Yeah, the prior impact assistance funds were based off of a baseline sales tax amount, and we just received lump sum monies at that point in time, and they were not tied to any specific project. And from my understanding, talking with her, that's what this $570,000 is.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't think I would feel bad about tapping into that to cover some of these expenses because we encumbered the expenses of those impacts. We maintained the roads. We provided the law enforcement. So this is money that came in after the fact.
Thanks, Ms. Rebecca. You made it easy for us almost to follow.
So what are you showing for the deficit?
519,000. And I redid it, but I have the original 3.4. We cut capital by 2.4. And then another, which leaves us with 1,069,000.
Okay.
300,000 for the maintenance fund, which leaves us with 969,000. The hospitals requested 949,000, but if we cut them to 500,000, that saves us 449,000. So subtract that and I get 519. So I'm not too sure if there's 120 somewhere that I'm missing that I didn't hear.
Yeah, because I've got 319, so
Yeah. So are you, for the hospital maintenance fund, are you cutting them the 300,000 plus the 277 that they cut themselves for Title 19? Is that the difference? Or just the
Title-
flat 300?
So I
Okay.
did 749, 693, 45. So the 300 cut plus leaving 500,000 in the depreciation fund that we were looking to establish. So we would be taking, or
Back.
using some of that carryover rather, of 449, 693, 45. So when I add 449 plus the 300,000, 749.
And your beginning start with that was 1,069,000 after the capital cuts?
Get that for you. Let's see. 1,069,000.
Yeah, okay.
And so then
Line-
from that 1,069,000, I subtracted the
Oh,
749,000.
I just found it. So minus the 300,000 is gonna give us 669, not 969. So 239. Or did I mess it again? 449, 690.
Got 319. So it would be that 1,069,117. Then I subtracted the 749,693.45 from the hospital.
I'm at the 318,985.
Nope, 320, 124. 749, 693.
We're close. I'm sure there's some dollar and cents in there somewhere, but what was your number, Island?
318,985 change.
You can put it in your computer and send it.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm like, I have it right
That's the
here.
final thing.
Well, not the spreadsheet part, because I gotta fix all of
I'm sure there's some rounding errors in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
You got a number, Rob?
I do not. I stopped and decided I would defer to your numbers.
We're
I'm at
close.
319, 424.
There we go. And 28 cents.
I didn't go that deep.
That's okay. We're there. We made it. We made it.
I'm showing 1,399,335 in capital. Another 1,014,986 in component capital cuts. And then 749,693.45 to the two different, to the hospital lines. So
Yeah.
with that, I got 3.483 million deficit. Adding those back in, I think gave me 318,985.
Yeah, so I show all the exact same, other than what's your total deficit at the top? 3,483,438.73.
I just went 3,483
Okay,
straight, so
that's why.
I said I was missing.
Oh, yeah, so there's your $400.
That enough for today?
Good work.
So I think over the next 2 weeks, Mr. Chairman, we have, when Christina gets done dispensing justice, we have her go through this and see where we can apply ARPA money to, and any savings we can get on ARPA, we try to roll back into some of our capital projects that we rank. Is that what you're thinking?
Yep. Sounds
Yeah, I
good.
mean, we're still roughly 320 off, but some of this is based on projection too. So, well, obviously a large majority of it is.
Yeah, we still have 4 more weeks of bills that need to be paid.
And I guess for your side of things, are you planning on having everything prepared next meeting, or are we going to have another workshop? And then would we need to host a special meeting to approve the final budget, or?
Our budget hearing is set for the 27th, but we can change that if needed. I mean, that's just based off of the schedule that we come up with,
Sure.
Is what day is our budget hearing?
the 27th, that evening.
Thought I had something on my calendar for the 20th too.
We originally had it that way, and then we decided to move it a week. So that way, if we decided to do more workshops, we had time for it.
I think we should probably at least have one more workshop.
Yeah, and there is 3 weeks between now and the next meeting as well. So,
Yeah, so we pushed it to the last Thursday of the month.
June 27th, right?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Is your intent, Mr. Chairman, to go ahead and have Christina present and then also look at all of the departments, because we've not looked at the departments too at that point in time? Or do you feel like if there's any issues with departments, we should just bring them up individually?
Yeah, that was kind of my thought. I think most of them were good about coming in flat. And obviously we know we got 3% COLA and the 5% on the health insurance. So,
Yeah. I think it might be worth, in that meeting, it might take a half hour to go through those. It might be a good idea just to go through.
Okay.
I'm not sure how anybody else feels about it, but I think I would feel better in having done it as a group, just looking at that also. I don't think there's much out there. I've looked at it too, but just, I think during that meeting, we should have enough time to do that.
okay. Why don't we plan on having Christina bring us some clarity? We'll go through the departments quickly, see if we can wrap up the final numbers and then approve it on the 27th. Everyone good with that?
I think so.
9 o'clock.
And find out, are there any more accounts like that 570? Do you know?
There are, we have money in the
Opioid.
opioid account,
I mean,
which,
that aren't so restrictive on how we can use them.
no, I think the other accounts that are out there, and like some of these, we have not had a plan put in place. I mean, we've got an attorney who's working with us to try and come up with a method for using the opioid funding. We've got some problematic gambling money that has come in, but we have got the protocols are not in place to spend those monies yet. But I felt like the impact assistance one, with having some revenue there that was unrestricted, was something that we should have. There aren't any others that I know of other than that would be significant funds.
And it's worth having the discussion, going forward, how we treat the horse racing money. I know the events complex broached the subject of dedicating some of that money. They're 30%, I think it is, to a capital fund for them, because they're the ones that are generating that revenue. So
Don't we have a memorandum with them on that, Island?
we do, but I think it's coming to an end. I think we're
Okay.
Everyone good with that approach?
So we're gonna workshop after our next meeting,
Yeah.
and then one more after that when we still haven't figured this.
No.
So on the 18th. So I think that will be, unless we schedule a special one, that,
There's not 3 weeks between now and the next
yeah, I would
meeting.
say that's
Sorry.
our last one.
I'm
That's the
looking at
last,
many numbers. I apologize.
um,
But the 20th is not a scheduled meeting, because that's showing on my calendar. Well, I think I had the 20th, that's the schedule.
Yeah, she said they changed.
They did.
Yeah, we changed it to the 27th to give us an extra week.
I missed that memo.
I must have put it on for that. Many emails, they get so bogged down.
So we
Oh,
have,
that was the final vouchers, Island. That's what that is.
Okay.
On the 20th.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have to do that as well. So the 18th is our last scheduled workshop.
Yeah. And then any odds and ends we'll try and clean up for the 27th.
Okay, we'll give requisition a stool for her, you know,
Are you tired of standing yet?
on knees.
So on the departments, this time I did the summary and the last time I did the detailed. Are you guys, since you want to review those, are you happy with the summaries or do you want me to go back to the detail?
Well, we still have both, so.
Yeah, there hasn't been any change in the funding.
we can study from that, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fine. Okay. That was painful but productive.
Pretty good. I was proud of you.
Any other final thoughts?
I think, Mr. Chairman, we get this operational balanced with all of our operational funds. I think we can come back and look at some of their capital needs. I mean, there's a reason we put money aside for capital needs last time, and if we think they're worth using some of that money, because if anything we put off a year is going to cost us more next year. So, I think we're worth discussing funding some of those additional capital things out of reserves if necessary.
Did you get that one out?
Okay. It's enough fun today. Thank you, Rebecca, for hanging in there with us, and we'll look forward to wrapping this up.